This video is sponsored by War Thunder. Helldivers has been completely reworked and remade into an entirely new game. Actually, it was honestly just made into the game we all remember that came out at the start of this year. A horde shooter that prioritizes fun times, large explosions, and a little bit of friendly fire above all else. Oh my god! Now, when the game first came out, and a month later, those two nerfs dropped to the breaker and the railgun, a lot of people thought the writing was on the wall. That Helldivers would keel over and just become another game where the devs decided to nerf all the fun for some reason. And hit all those items to prevent a meta. We hit an all-time low of 5K players at the bottom. It got pretty bad, but luckily the devs decided to pop a stim and remind us that Helldivers never die. The latest patch buffed something like 40 or 50 weapons and stratagems. There was also buffs to the armor matching penalty, which effectively just buffed nearly every single weapon and stratagem in the game. Like, even guns that weren't specifically buffed on this list feel better to use now because the armor matching penalty was reduced. And on top of that, those two guns I mentioned, the breaker and the railgun, were buffed back to their launch states. For example, with the railgun, it used to be bugged to just straight up one-shot Bile Titans when you're playing on a crossplay or like a laggy server, and the devs nerfed it for that reason. But the buff they gave to it was over a 400% damage increase, and it is nearly as powerful as its straight up bugged state. Like, they actually reverted this gun to what everyone was using on launch. But what's awesome about this latest patch is, even though there's this crazy buff, I tried out the railgun, it was powerful, it was super fun. I posted a video showcasing it if you'd like to check it out. But what's awesome about this last patch is I quickly moved on to other loadouts that I just thought were cool, fun, and interesting. And the best part is now those fun loadouts work. Like, the new Warbond just came out, and me and my squad were just all running gas builds, literally all of the gas items, and walking through bug breaches of confused enemies, getting 60 kill streaks. Or, everybody puts on their firefighter suit and we all just blast everything with the beautiful flamethrower VFX that they have now reverted and they look amazing now. Or a bit of laser maxing, where the laser cannon can now literally kill Bile Titans. Arrowhead has completely reworked the game and proved that by buffing everything, you can actually get rid of the meta. When they're nerfing everything and 85% of the weapons feel subpar, you naturally gravitate to the other 15%, because otherwise the game can just feel like a slog to most people. But now there's so many good options, you can honestly feel free to try out almost anything and actually just have fun doing it. But with every single patch, the pendulum swings, and now the vocal minority of the player base are complaining that the game is too easy. And these same people thought all the previous nerfs were justified for, I don't know, realism, I guess. But we're gonna be talking about how the game feels way better now and more realistic than ever, and why you should try it again. Now, if you're actually looking for another realistic and free-to-play game, then look no further than War Thunder. They have over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from the 10 major nations. Over 70 million players from console and PC have already signed up. My favorite part of this game is still the X-ray view. When you shoot one of the enemy vehicles, you can see precisely where your shells penetrated, and their part system shows you exactly what parts were effective and what led to the destruction of the vehicle. Sometimes it's taking out the crew on the inside, which I honestly just think is really cool. Now, when you do decide to play, you can also choose between the 3 game modes, depending if you want some fast-paced arcade-style matches or their most realistic game modes available. And with all the attention to detail when it comes to each vehicle, the graphics, and their sound design, you will be completely immersed at the helm of the most powerful war machines of our time. They've even got some vehicles dating back to 1920. War Thunder also runs on their own in-house developed Dagger engine, heavily optimized for visuals and high frame rates even on the lower end machines. That way, any fan of military history will love this game no matter what system they're playing on. So click the link in the description to play War Thunder for free using my link, and my link will get you a bonus pack shot, which includes 100k silver lions, 7 days of a premium account, and for my fellow Helldivers, you can get the vehicle decorator, the Eagle of Valor. And by the way, that's for any new players or anyone who just hasn't played for 6 months on Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. And last time we did the War Thunder sponsor on the channel, plenty of people have commented about their awesome experience with this game. So click the link if you're interested in trying it. Now, I want to talk about a number of things in this video. Number one is primarily how this patch proves that when you buff everything, you actually get rid of the meta. Number two is going to be the biggest threat to the game, which is that loud minority of players trying to spread the narrative that the game is too easy. And number three is that while this was a great patch, we definitely still have to pay attention to what Arrowhead is doing. Definitely keep voicing your concerns. They 1000% brought the game in a great direction. Credit where credit's due, and all power to them. And I'm super excited to be playing this game again. But last time we got a big buff patch back in June. Right after that one, Escalation of Freedom happened, and we all know that story. So back in March, when they did their first round of nerfs, the devs stated that many people were saying, don't nerf, only buff. But they decided to say, as a designer, that's not a great idea. And as recently as August 6th, well, you know, the Escalation of Freedom patch, they nerfed the Breaker Incendiary for having a 30% pick rate. They used to very much so nerf things to stop meta, but all this actually really did was create a meta. Removing people's favorite option in the Breaker Incendiary because they just didn't want to deal with the ammo situation. And lots of people were moving on to the next best thing, which during Escalation of Freedom was the cookout and the auto cannon combo. And luckily that's in the past, because this last patch brought up every single gun and it has actually disintegrated the meta. There are definitely some top tier picks this patch that, you know, shine above the others, but it doesn't outshine, because if you decide to go with some other options that you think are fun, cool, and interesting, you won't be feeling like you're making the game harder for yourself just by picking those. Take a gun like the Liberator Concussive, for example. This was pretty much known as one of the worst guns, if not the worst gun in the game since launch. All they did for this gun was double the magazine size. They gave it a drum mag. And this simple buff, on top of making a lot of the enemies not so spongy, it feels awesome to use against bugs now, because it's just a great crowd control weapon. You know, we're taking a lot more damage this patch. We'll push all those bugs back with the Liberator Concussive. And no, I'm not saying the Liberator Concussive is S tier. I honestly think it could be slightly improved a little more, maybe just a little bit more fire rate, because it is pretty slow. But I honestly am just grateful that this gun feels good to use, and I am happy to use it. Another, you know, slight buff, I'd be even happier. But this is my, kind of my point. This patch, there are some amazing standout options that are shining, but even the worst guns in the game, such as the Liberator Concussive, actually feel good to use now. And it actually doesn't feel like the worst gun in the game anymore. Now, another awesome thing they released recently was the Chemical Agents Warbond. And I think this Warbond is really neat because it is a pure support-based warbond. It honestly isn't going to be for everyone, and there have been some mixed opinions on it. All of the guns and items in this warbond do not do a lot of raw DPS. In fact, the gas-based items in this warbond do so little damage that if you're wearing heavy armor and you happen to use the Vitality booster, you actually take 0 damage from the sterilizer, because your damage resistances make its low damage round down to 0. And that's why this warbond isn't for everyone. With that being said though, you can supplement a lot of these different items into your builds. Take the Dog Breath, for example, which is the gas thrower. That can go into any build against bugs that's not already wearing a backpack. And it is purely a crowd control tool that straight up keeps you alive. Instead of using something like the sterilizer, which I do think is decent, but it does need some quality of life buffs. The Dog Breath backpack can just gas up enemies for you, confuse them, and then you already have your primary or support weapon in your hand to go to town. And honestly, what I think is the best item in this warbond is the gas grenades. Now, the gas grenades are honestly better stun grenades in my opinion. Here is a clip of me confusing a barrager tank with these grenades. Now, sometimes when you confuse an enemy, they still happen to be shooting your way, or a bug can still be swiping your way. But most of the time, as long as you can back up as soon as you gas them, they are effectively stunned, because most of the enemies just straight up aren't attacking you. And the thing about the gas grenades is it leaves a lingering cloud of gas for 15 seconds. the stun grenade lasts for about 4 seconds. And you can confuse enemies like barrager tanks. I think I've even confused impalers with the gas. Those two enemies, the stun grenades can't confuse. And I know a lot of people have been saying the gas grenade is good, but I don't think people realize just how actually insane that they are. And the last item in this warbond I haven't talked about yet is the stim pistol. And this is something I think a lot of people are sleeping on because, again, it's purely a support tool. The stim pistol, I will flat out say, you know, the gas grenades and stuff like that are useful for crowd control for yourself. The stim pistol is straight up a weapon that you are going to be shooting at your teammates. You can't shoot it at yourself. It would be very nice if you could, but it is purely a support tool. All I will say about the stim pistol is literally we did a bots match earlier and only one person on the squad brought one with them. And by the end of the match, the stat screen said they used 179 stims. And all of our faces ended up looking like this. And just being able to ask them to shoot me after all of our fights so that way I could save my actual stims for when I am in the thick of it pretty much meant that whole match, the only time I died was when I got one shot by the bullshit rocket striders. Fucking jammed. All right, we gotta make this happen. Come on. Wow.
We gotta make this happen.
Yo, we gotta make this happen. Time, space, person.
The main thing, like I said, is you really only need one person on your squad with a stim pistol because it comes with 24 stims and it refills from ammo packs. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this warbond is perfect. I think it could use some quality of life tweaks, especially with the sterilizer. It would be really nice if it left lingering clouds instead of just applying that 3-second confuse to enemies. And even though I know it's not like necessarily meant to do damage, I do think it could use a slight damage buff because it is weird that wearing any heavy armor can just round the damage straight down to 0. And the fact that any heavy armor can take 0 damage from your sterilizer or dog breath or gas grenades, it made me really think that the gas resistance armor in this warbond should give you 100% resistance. Because honestly, that is the one aspect that makes the gas builds really fun, is that you can confuse enemies, you can put clouds out there, but then you can get really, really close and take advantage of it. But in general, you know, at the end of the day, the warbond itself and the state of the game is in such a spot that I feel like I could just leave some feedback out there and that the devs will actually listen like they did with this last patch. The game is really fun, and if you haven't played the last couple months and maybe you're checking out this video, you should definitely give Helldivers another try. Now, even though all this good stuff with the patch, tons of people are excited, the player counts are up, there are still people in the community complaining and spreading the narrative that the game is too easy now. And this same loud minority were the ones on the previous patches trying to say skill issue when tons of weapon nerfs were happening. Now, some of these people exist on Reddit with Reddit posts, but also it's very, very bad in the main Helldivers Discord. I am straight up risking being banned for showing this message here on one of them calling one of my videos clickbait. Now, I'm purposefully blocking out their name. Please do not go respond to this person because they are not the only person in the main Discord who does stuff like this or acts like YouTubers are the end of the world because we cried to get the game easier. Instead, I honestly just want to straight up argue the points. I only care about the arguments about the game. I don't really care about arguing with anyone in particular, because the point they're trying to make is that all these weapon buffs are essentially bad for the game. It makes it too easy. And here's the thing. We all know what Helldivers has been for the last several months versus what the game is finally turning into. And I'll say it again, this previous patch didn't just make the game perfect or anything like that. There's still more patches to be done, but it was a major pivot into what I really want Helldivers to be. So the clickbait YouTube video I posted in question was why the guns feel bad in Helldivers 2 and how that they are straight up designed to suck. All I did in that video was explain some of the math behind the weapons and how they are literally not designed to hit breakpoints. The simplest argument for this, why it's not clickbait, is because the Helldivers devs told us this months ago in the first blog post. Players were complaining that primary weapons were unable to deal with all the enemies by either their amount of ammo or raw DPS, and the blog post response to this is that it is intentional. The guns used to be designed to suck. And all this led to over the past couple months was frustration and people losing interest and moving on. And the other thing is that not all guns were designed to suck, like the Breaker Incendiary, which was the last gun to catch a nerf. The Cookout, which came out right when the Breaker Incendiary caught the nerf. And, some other guns like the Jar Dominator, the Autocannon, these kinds of guns still felt good to use. And you know what happened? These were the meta. With that being said though, this patch where they've finally buffed up all the guns, there is less of a meta than ever before. And this is what I badly want for Helldivers. We actually want the same thing. The devs previously nerfing guns didn't want a meta, and neither do I, except we want it in different ways. And what I want to do in this game is the most cool, fun, and interesting things that I can find. Saying that a PvE game is too easy is honestly just a horrible perspective to have when playing a PvE game. PvE games, by nature, by design, will become easier the more you play them. Even on the last patch, Escalation of Freedom, when the game was probably in its worst state ever, I could still easily complete super hell dive missions. And guess what? I'm not saying that as a flex. I could pick up a Cookout and an autocannon and go solo a super hell dive bug breach. I am literally not saying I'm a god gamer. I'm saying that is the nature of PvE. I'm a YouTuber who has made videos about this game and played this game for over 1,000 hours. Fighting bugs and bots is my second nature at this point. If I was still bad at this game after 1,000 hours, then that would say a lot worse about me. But that's my entire point. The longer I play a game against computers, it's literally an AI. It's not like it's another person who's like getting the edge on me at different times. It's not PvP, the better I get at it. And that goes for everyone. I'm sure most of us can remember our first chargers or the first Bile Titan we ever fought. And guess what? I got wrecked. The first charger I ever came across, I didn't even know how to kill it. But now we all have something in our loadouts to deal with them. It's literal just proof of the more you play the game, the more you get better at it. So the devs' old strategy of purposefully gimping the guns to feel bad is just frustrating and uninteresting. In a PvE game, the fun should obviously be at the forefront. When I play this game, I like to find I'll say it again, the most cool, interesting, and exciting things to do. That's my priority number one. And that's why I mentioned at the start of this video that making my squad run all gas loadouts, then we ran all fire loadouts, then we ran all arc loadouts, and then we ran all laser loadouts is the best way to have fun in this game. The real end game of Helldivers is the friends we make along the way. I've been saying this for months now. It's not picking the meta and optimizing the fun out of the game. Now, the other thing I really want to point out here is don't get my argument twisted at all. I am not saying that the game should just flat out be easy. The real way to make the game more difficult is to do it in a fun way rather than a frustrating way. And I think the best place to go for answers on how to make the game more difficult is the Helldivers 2 back cover, which first says, spread democracy with overpowered weapons. And then it says, work as a team to overcome impossible odds. Now, the CCO Pilestedt also acknowledged that this patch of the game specifically probably will be an easier version of the game, and that they will find ways to make the game more challenging soon. And that's why I wanted to bring up this conversation, because hopefully they go with what the back of their box says, overcoming impossible odds. And I am talking about upping the spawn rates of giant hordes like crazy. Like when you're extracting and the entire map is walking on your location, that's what I think the start of the match should feel like. Maybe try putting stalkers in bug breaches like I've been saying. Maybe we should see those insane Shrieker hordes that we saw on Meridia. And by the way, I'm only talking about putting this stuff on the highest difficulties, like honestly only like 9 and 10, or if they add another difficulty at that point. Anybody who does want to have a chill time on a difficulty they can earn super samples on, I do think they should mainly leave 6 and 7 alone. But to me, upping the spawn rates of enemies while making my guns feel good to use against them is the best way to spike my dopamine and also just have laughs and good times with my friends as we're all running for our life because there's just so many enemies. I don't need to win. It's a PvE game. I don't mind if I lose if I felt I had a fighting chance and could prepare for the fight that I know is coming. We already have those mission modifiers that put Shriekers on the map, but it is just kind of tiny patrols of them. And laser weapons are virtually hit scan. They're very good for dealing with Shriekers. So if there's already a Shrieker modifier, maybe I know to bring a laser that game. And then if there's a sheer overwhelming amount of shriekers all of a sudden halfway through a mission, that can still provide a challenge, even though I'm prepared for it. Now, at the same time as all of this, I want to let you guys know to not start glazing the game again. I genuinely believe that the loud minority of players who were telling everyone skill issue every time a nerf happened were the ones gassing up the devs as they were doing the nerfing. And I also think that the game isn't in a perfect spot after this last patch. There's a lot more feedback to be given and more work they can do to bring up some of the other weapons with some quality of life. I still think the Eruptor needs its original shrapnel back. I still think the Lib Concussive could use a slight fire rate boost. I think the gas and the fire armors should give you 100% resistance. But at the same time, this last patch for Helldivers 2 did absolutely cook. Credit for where credit is due, because Arrowhead really knocked it out of the park with this one. They made Thermite, the most useless grenade in the game, kill tanks for once. It's crazy. An anti-tank grenade can actually kill tanks, and it has helped with weapon diversity more than any other change, I think, because when you can bring that anti-tank in your grenade slot, you can just run all machine guns or all horde clear. And they also didn't make it overpowered. It's not like you could just throw one anywhere. You actually have to be accurate and land it on the weak spots of the tank. Otherwise, you gotta waste 2 or 3 of them. So even though it's very powerful, it's not overpowered. Like, you can't just kill a Bile Titan anywhere unless you land it on the head. And a lot of times when the chaos is happening, I'll find myself just lobbing 3 of these at that Bile Titan so I can keep running. And buffing this Thermite grenade has helped the meta more than ever, because guess what? Last patch, the only grenade I used was stun grenade. So that was the meta when everything sucked. So I am 1,000,000% willing to give credit where credit is due. This last patch was awesome. But also, at the same time, because of previous actions, they don't have my 100% trust yet. It is what it is. I really hope they keep up this trend because it is working for them. And I honestly recommend, if you haven't played this game for a couple months, hop online and bring the loadout you just think is the coolest. And then if your loadout is missing some horde clear or some tank clear, swap out something that can do that job for you. If you're into a straight up support playstyle, then check out the latest Warbond, because it honestly is really fun for support players. But if you're not into that support playstyle, pick up some Democratic Detonation or Freedom's Flame. Get those high DPS weapons you're looking for. If you want a Warbond that's very, very solid, pick up Cutting Edge. It's got 3 solid weapons for both factions, and it's got the stun grenades in it. And if you're into a realistic vehicular combat game, then use my link in the description to check out War Thunder. It's free to play, and you can get some awesome bonuses using my link for new and returning after 6 months players. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it and subscribe. I stream on this YouTube channel live all the time, so be sure to turn on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.